friends, my name is Alexis, and today I'm going to be doing a book recommendation video based on tropes. A few days ago on my Instagram account, I posted this thing on my story asking you guys for tropes, vibes, and just general concepts that you would like books recommended for, and a lot of you guys responded with some really good tropes, so I compiled a huge list of books today to recommend to you based on the different tropes that I was given in that Instagram story. As a note, if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, here is my username. And by the way, hi, my name is Alexis. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, I am a bookstagrammer, book blogger, book YouTuber, that sort of thing, and I just love chatting about books on the internet. So if this is your first video with me, thank you so much for watching, and if it's not, hi again, and thanks for returning. So today I have, I think, about 20 book recommendations based on different specific tropes to share with you guys. I'm going to try not to dwell on each book for a long time because I could just sit here and talk about these books for way too long, to the point where this video is just going to be like hours long. So I'm going to try to stay as quick to the point as I humanly possibly can, so that way you guys can get some great book recs and I don't bore you to death. The first category I'm going to talk about today is friends to lovers. All the books I have on this section are books I've actually read within the past month, so these are like books I'm so excited to recommend. My first Friends to Lover recommendation is The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams. I picked this up after loving another book by Sarah Adams, and this one was so good. This also works for fake dating, but I think it's mainly Friends to Lovers, so that's why I decided to put it in this category. This is about our main two characters, Bree and Nathan. It is a ballerina times NFL football league romance. It is really cute. She owns a dance studio. He plays football professionally, and they have been best friends for like 6 years and have been hiding their feelings both the whole time. This is a dual POV. It is a pretty short read, so it's really fast to get through, and I really enjoyed this book. The second Friends to Lovers book is Love Life Harms by B.K. Borison. I read this book in December of 2020, and it was just so cute. Love Life Harms is about our main character, Stella, and Stella runs a Christmas tree farm in their small town, but they're really struggling with funding, so she decides to enter this social media competition for the chance of winning, I think, $100,000, and also because then that way she could get some more publicity for the farm. But on her application, she decides to lie and say that she has a boyfriend because she thinks that it'll give them a more romantic appeal if their Christmas tree farm is owned by a couple instead of just her. And when she is selected to enter the competition, she quickly realizes, oh, I need to get a fake boyfriend because I said I had a boyfriend. So she asks her best friend Luca, who has been her best friend for literally 10 years, to fake date her, and it was so cute. It really gives hardcore Christmassy vibes. I loved reading it in the wintertime, and this one was just like so sweet and cute, and their romance was incredible. And my final Friends to Lover recommendation comes out in April of this year, I think, and that is Not Here to Stay Friends. Not Here to Stay Friends is a YA contemporary novel about our main two characters. I think the main girl is named Salone, and Salone decides to visit her childhood best friend for the summer, so she flies to, I think, California to hang out with him. They haven't seen each other in a long time since his father moved to California several years ago to work in the TV industry, so they've been having like a long distance friendship for several years now. But pretty soon after they meet back up, they realize they both have an attraction for each other. It is dual POV, so you get both perspectives of that, and there's a lot of really good mutual pining. This one also has a really cool concept like plot, because the main female character, Sloane, is actually going to be on a teen dating show during the plot of the book. Essentially, she gets to California with her friend, and then his dad is like, hey, we're filming this show. It's pretty much like The Bachelor, but for teenagers, and we need someone else because one of the other girls dropped out. Would you mind stepping in as a favor? And she decides to do it. So she's on the show while her best friend, Liam, his name's Liam, well, Liam is a PA on the show. So there is a lot of mutual pining, and it's dual POV, and I really enjoyed that book. Like I said, it comes out in April, and I think that it's just going to blow up. It's such a cute book. My second category is the one that I had the most books for, and I actually had to kind of shorten my list because I was like, I cannot spend this entire video just recommending books for this trope. But that trope is the second chance romance trope. I have realized that the second chance romance trope is one of my all-time favorites. I don't mind books where the characters meet for the first time and then fall in love, but there is something about the emotional depth of a second chance romance where you're watching these characters fall back in love after they fell out of love that just like really pulls at my heartstrings, and I have a lot of recommendations for this trope. The first 3 books are all by the same set of authors, so I'm going to go through those all together. The first is With and Without You by Emily Wibberley and Austin Cedron Broca. This is their 2022 YA contemporary novel, and it is about a long-distance couple who fall back in love with each other, and oh my goodness. As someone who has been in a long-distance relationship, this book really destroyed me emotionally and tugged at my heartstrings. If you don't know, the authors, Emily and Austin, did long distance for 4 years in college, and then now they write romance novels together. And this book just so clearly reads like they were in a long distance relationship. So if you have ever been in one, this book is like the perfect, beautiful, emotional capture of what being in one is like. This book was so beautiful and well done, and I enjoyed it so much. Essentially, as a more thorough synopsis, our main characters are Sienna and Patrick. They have been together for pretty much all of high school, and they feel like, at least Sienna feels like she doesn't have much of an identity outside of their relationship just because they've been together for so long. But on the day she decides that she's going to break up with Patrick, Patrick is like, surprise, I'm moving to Texas. So Sienna decides not to break up with him. I'm talking really fast. Sienna decides not to break up with him and thinks, okay, if we're doing long distance, our relationship's just going to fizzle out over the distance. And we'll just, break up that way instead of me having to be the villain and dumping him. But along the way of their long-distance relationship, they actually end up falling back in love with each other. And this book was just so beautiful and emotional, and I love this book so much. It is one of my all-time favorite YA contemporaries, and I think it is criminally underrated. Next from Emily and Austin is The Roughest Draft, which was their debut romance novel, which came out in 2022 in January, so about a year ago. This is about 2 co-authors who wrote a book together that did massively well, hugely successful, and then essentially, at least in the public eye, just stopped talking and disappeared, and no one really knew what happened to these 2 authors, besides the fact that they don't talk about each other anymore. But they are contractually obligated to write 1 more book together, and despite the fact that they don't talk for mysterious reasons, they decide, okay, let's just go ahead and get this second book out of the way. They rent a beach cabin in Florida where they wrote their first book together and decide to camp together for a summer retreat in this house and just get that second book done so then they never have to see each other again. But when they get there, obviously things change and sparks fly and they have their second chance romance. The book is told in, I don't remember if it's I think it might be dual POV and dual timeline, but this book was so good. I love Emily and Austin. I talk about them all the time, but I was absolutely blown away by The Roughest Draft when it came out. I thought it was so well written and it's so atmospheric. I love the Florida beach house setting in that book. Also by them is, of course, their 2023 release, Do I Know You, which I actually read less than a week ago from when I'm filming this, but Do I Know You, again, it's their January 2023 release, and it's also a second chance romance between a married couple. So this one is our main 2 characters, Eliza and Graham, and essentially they get a gift from Graham's parents to go on a week-long vacation to celebrate their 5-year marriage anniversary, and when you start the book, you instantly get this feeler that neither of them are really that happy in their marriage. Neither of them know how to communicate to the other. It's very awkward. It's dual POV, by the way. And when they get there, they accidentally kind of get set up with each other at a bar by a stranger who doesn't realize that they're already married. So they decide to kind of go along with it and pretend that they don't know each other and play strangers. And they end up finding a little bit of a spark again when they do that. So then they go, okay, hold on. That was really fun. That was really cool. How about for the rest of the week, or at least for a little bit, we continue to pretend that we're strangers and we can come up with alternate kind of personas and we can just kind of get to know each other. And this book was so good. I flew through it so quickly. It'll actually, by the way, it'll be in next week's reading vlog. It'll be up. So if you want to actually see my full thoughts on that book, it'll be there. But I love that book so much. It was so good. It was really addicting. And I was flying through it. It's a little spicier than the first book, which I enjoyed. And I also just thought that it was such a beautifully well-rounded story that was so addicting to read. I love the character development in it, and I felt like they just did a fantastic job on their sequel novel. Emily and Austin have not disappointed, and I am even more excited now to read their 3rd adult romance novel, which comes out in 2024. Okay, there are other books on this list that are not just Emily and Austin, I promise. The next one is actually In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. This is the sequel companion novel to Love Light Farms, which I already shared in this video. You don't have to read Love Light Farms to read this book. You could definitely read them independently, but this book features characters that were prominent in the first one. This one follows our main characters, Evelyn and Beckett. Evelyn is a social media influencer, and Beckett is a farmer at Love Light Farms. And they had a hookup when they were both in Maine for a weekend. They hooked up for like 2 nights straight. And then Beckett wakes up and Evie is gone. And he thinks, okay, I'm never going to see her again. And he stays thinking about her. She stays thinking about him. Months and months later, they end up meeting back up together at Love Light Farms, and they have a really cute second chance romance. I enjoyed this book a lot. I read it in December, and I gave it, I think, 3.5 stars. It's really cute. Beckett is such like a grumpy guy, but like a teddy bear on the inside, and it was just really fun and really cute. I haven't yet read the 3rd book in this series, but if you're looking for a fun, cute second chance romance with small town vibes and a male main protagonist who has like 3 or 4 cats and a duck, you're going to want to read In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. Next is 1,000 Miles by Bridget Morisi. I read this book in the fall of 2020, and honestly, I am sad to say I don't remember the most details about this book, just that I did really enjoy it. This is a second chance romance between 2 friends, Ben and Dee, who were high school friends, but then they had a falling out. And it's a handful of years later, if not more, and our main character Dee is a full-time podcaster. And in her podcast, she talks about a lot of personal stuff in her life, stories, and she's just very open and honest. But the one person she won't talk about is Ben. And her viewers have been begging her forever to talk about Ben. Like, he's literally not even named in the podcast. They call him, like, name redacted. Literally, they call him name redacted. So, one day, Ben shows up literally at her doorstep and is like, hey, we promised that we were going to take a road trip in 10 years to go dig up this time capsule we buried at my grandma's house. Let's go do it. So they decide to go do it because in Dee's mind, she's like, you know what, I can finally maybe get some closure and finally maybe actually tell my listeners about Name Redacted, maybe even get him on the podcast. But they end up taking this road trip to go to his grandma's house, which is like a 7-hour drive, and having a second chance romance. If I remember correctly, this is dual POV, and it's told both in regular style chapters and also podcast chapters, where it's like a literal description of like what is being said in the podcast. My final second chance romance recommendation is Funny You Should Ask by Elisa Sussman. This is one that I read in 2022, and I enjoyed it so much. This also works for the famous person times not famous person trope, by the way, but this book was really enjoyable. This is about our main character, Chani. I know I'm pronouncing her name wrong. They literally talk about how to pronounce it in the book, but I still always pronounce it wrong. But it's Chani and Gabe. And essentially about 10 years ago, Chani and Gabe sit down for an interview because Gabe is an up-and-coming movie actor. And they end up doing we don't know what at the beginning. But everyone just assumes that she slept with him based on the personal like expose and interview she published about him. And that's kind of like what she gets known as in her career. That's the girl that interviewed Gabe. And then it's just a really, really famous interview in their world. And it's kind of always haunted her career. And about 10 years later, at the time the book starts, Chani is asked to interview Gabe again, maybe get closure. You know, they had such a famous interview. Hey, you should interview him again. So this book, I think, is told in dual timeline, where you get to find out what happened in the past between them and also get to watch as they meet up again 10 years later. This is a really short read, and it was really enjoyable. I loved both of the main characters, and I just thought this book was so much fun. My third trope, enemies to lovers / academic rivals to lovers. Okay, a lot of people wanted enemies to lovers, but after looking at this list, I realized that, like, I do read enemies to lovers, but I honestly don't read as much enemies to lovers as I thought, but I do read a lot of rivals to lovers, especially academic rivals to lovers, so I thought I would kind of just combine those tropes here. I only really have one enemies to lovers book, so that book, by the way, is You Deserve Each Other. Oh my gosh, I talked about this book somewhat recently, so I'm going to try to bite my tongue a little, but You Deserve Each Other is like full-on enemies to lovers and also second chance romance in the best way. I'm going to put this down. So You Deserve Each Other is about our main 2 characters. They are an engaged couple. It's Naomi and someone. It's Naomi and someone. But Naomi, our main female character, so they're engaged, and she is not having a good time, and she doesn't feel very content in the relationship, and she feels like she's been feigning contentment for a really long time at this point, and doesn't really know what to do about the relationship. However, very early on in the book, you find out that the male love interest also maybe isn't feeling as content with the relationship as possible, and they each start trying to like butt each other out of the engagement by like pranking the other person. Like their whole goal at the beginning of the book is to convince the other person that they are going to call it off, because each of the characters is like being super insufferable. And honestly, at the beginning there was even some stuff where I was like, that's way too far. Like that is way too far. So I was like, there was a few moments where I was like, divorce. Divorce. So like, it is really, really hardcore enemies to lovers. For sure. Like, they really, really hate each other. So, naturally, as they are doing this like whole prank war thing where they hate each other, they start falling back in love with each other. And this book was so good. I think about this book all the time, and I cannot wait to read more from Sarah Hochul in 2023, because this book was just absolutely phenomenal. I loved it to pieces. If there's any book you read from this video, read this one. I mean, okay, I love like literally every book I talk about in this video, but like this book just holds a special place in my heart, and it was one of my favorite books of 2022, like absolutely for sure. I love this book so much, and if you like the enemies to lovers trope and second chance romance at the same time, read it. You gotta read it. Next we're gonna do rivals to lovers, because the other ones are like, they're like enemies to lovers, but I feel like they fit the rivals to lovers trope a little better. Okay, the first rivals to lover is Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon. If you've stuck around or like followed my Instagram for a while, you know I love this book, and it is rightfully loved. This book is incredible. It's been one of my favorites for literally years, and also I have a signed copy that just like I won in a giveaway, and it means everything to me. This book is it's set on the last day of senior year for our main two characters, Rowan and Neil. Rowan and Neil have been academic rivals for their entire high school career up until the point that the novel takes place. And it's finally the last day of senior year, and they're going to announce who is valedictorian and salutatorian, is I think what the second one's called. And on the last day of senior year, there is always a school-wide game of like assassin. It's like a mixture of like assassin and like finding clues. And very early into the game, Rowan and Neil find out that there is a plot to take them both down, because everyone hates them, because their rivalry has always ruined the curves on every test in like every class ever. So they decide to have an unlikely alliance for 24 hours to try to win, or at least survive, the game of assassin without being taken out by their angry classmates who are unhappy about the fact that they have always like messed the curve up and just generally annoyed everyone. And over those 24 hours, they have a romance and fall in love. And y'all, this book, so good, so slept on, and so good. I shouldn't think it's that slept on in like the bookstagram, booktok, booktube community, but I just think you should read it. You want to borrow my copy? Like, I think you should just read it. I also on this list have As If on Cue by Marissa Kantar. I forgot the word for a minute. I don't have my copy with me, but I read an arc of this one and loved it so much. It's also kind of like an academic-y / enemies to rivals moment, and in it our main two characters have to team up to convert this play the main female character wrote, I think, into a musical. And I wish I remembered more about this book. I just mostly remember that the tension was like so good, and that the first kiss scene was like chef's kiss. Like, it was so good. And I also remember thinking that like the way the author wrote the like in-story musical thing, like the musical play, was so interesting, and it felt so real. I like this book so much, and I think that this book is criminally underrated on bookish social media. Our next trope only has one book under it. I definitely have read more books with this trope. I just couldn't think of any in the moment. And that book, because I don't have a copy, I guess, with me, is Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. This one is also brother's best friend, and also you could say forced proximity. This one is about our main character, Olivia. And Olivia accidentally literally burns down her apartment building and has to move in with her older or younger. Has to move in with her brother and her brother's best friend for the time being. And Olivia's kind of like a mess. She's spontaneous, klutzy, causes issues everywhere she goes. And then the male main character is like the opposite. He's very put together and stiff and like polite and just... And their romance happens because she gets a wrong number text from him, and they end up kind of having like a flirtationship online, like through text, and they don't realize that it is the other person. And I thought this book was so cute. I love Lynn Painter, and this was like so good. I feel like I just keep saying that, like don't take a shot every time I say so good, because I think I've said that every single book on this list is so good, and Maybe I should come up with more words to say, but this one was so good, and the cover is super cute, and I just love Lynn Painter in general. So if you like my book recs, just read Lynn Painter, because she's like half of my book recs. And if you like the anonymous relationship trope, read Mr. Wrong Number. My next trope on the list is time loop, which I also don't have a ton of recs for. I don't typically like books with short time frames, but there are a few that I have read that I have absolutely adored. Funny enough, the next one's actually by Lynn Painter. That is The Do-Over. This was her 2022 YA contemporary, and this book, 5 stars. I actually did a reading vlog with this book earlier on my channel in case you want to check that one out. But this is about our main character, Emily. Emily has an awful Valentine's Day, literally described in the book as a dumpster fire Valentine's Day. And when she goes to bed at the end of her awful Valentine's Day, she wakes up and it's still Valentine's Day. So the book is following her stuck in this awful Valentine's Day loop, and it's just awful. In every single Valentine's Day, she watches her boyfriend cheat on her, she gets into a car accident, and she always somehow runs into our male main character, Nick. This book is really fun and really cute. I flew through it really fast during my first read, and I definitely think I would like to reread it at some point, because the first time I read it so quickly that I feel like I want to take a second read to just really absorb the details and appreciate the moments. If you are a fan of the trope I mentioned, you're going to want to read this. And if you're also a fan of Taylor Swift references in books, you're going to want to read this. The other time loop I have on my list is See You Yesterday by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This came out in May of 2022, and it's also a time loop romance. This one takes place on the first day of college for our main character, Barrett. And on her first day of college, things go horribly wrong. She has an interview that she botches. She has an awful first day of classes. Her roommate and her don't get along, and things are just not going well. And then she wakes up several days in a row and keeps realizing that it's just the same day. And in her time loop, she realizes that a guy from her physics class that she hates, Miles, is also stuck in the time loop, and actually has been stuck in the time loop for a significantly longer amount of time than she has. So this book is a bit of a longer one, and it is maybe a little more repetitive. Like, I think it has more like renditions of the day of the time loop, but I really like this one. The ending made me absolutely sob my eyes out, and I love the pink cover in this, and this book was just so fun and so good. I really loved Rachel Lynn Solomon's execution of the time loop, and I also thought it was really fun to have them both be stuck in the time loop together, because it gave so much more opportunity for their like romance and romantic feelings to fester for each other, and their romance was literally so good. I got 2 tropes left. 2 tropes. Okay, the next one is fake dating. Fake dating has been one of my favorite tropes since I read the To All the Boys I Love Before trilogy when I was like literally 13 years old. So the first fake dating book I have, This May End Badly by Samantha Markham. I feel like I've been talking about Miss Samantha Markham on my channel a little bit recently, and this was her debut YA contemporary novel that has an adorable relationship in it. This one has kind of a convoluted synopsis, so please stick with me. But this is about our main character, Doe, and Doe goes to an all-girls private school that has a long-term rivalry with an all-male school that's like across the road from them, essentially. And they find out at the end or beginning of her senior year that they're going to merge the 2 schools into one, and she's very, very upset about this. So she wants to try to prove that the boys and girls don't mix and that they really shouldn't like do this. So they kind of have a prank war going on that has already been going on, but she kind of wants to amp it up to like prove it, like to really prove they don't mix. And there is a guy at the other school named 3 who is like the king of the crop of that school. So in order to get under his skin, she strikes a deal with his cousin named Wells to fake date to get under 3's skin. This book was so cute. It has a really strong female friend group in it, and I just loved the boarding school vibes. Our main character definitely has some questionable things that she does, but it's also just really great. I like this book a lot. I will say a big trigger warning on this one, though, if you are sensitive to topics about teachers and inappropriate behavior. There is an on-page scene described later in the novel, so if you are at all concerned about that, please check the trigger warnings, or if you want more information about it, please message me on Instagram and I will happily fill you in about this book. I personally did enjoy this one a lot, but I would never want to recommend content that might be sensitive to some of you without giving you the warning that that content might be sensitive. Next for fake dating, I have one of the messiest YA books I've ever read, and that is Heartbreakers and Bakers by Cameron Lund. Y'all, criminally underrated. Criminally underrated YA contemporary. Criminally. The fact that I barely ever see this online upsets me. I read this book a few years ago when I was having a hard time sleeping, and I read this book and it literally just made my night so much better because I couldn't sleep, and then I read this and I was like, I don't even mind that I can't sleep now because this book was literally just so enjoyable. This is about our main character, Penny. She's one of the most popular girls in her school, and things kind of get messy when at a party when she is, I think, intoxicated. She kisses a guy named Kai, who is most definitely not her boyfriend and is in fact her longtime nemesis. After that, her boyfriend and her break up, and her best friend and her boyfriend get together. So, to retaliate, she and Kai, because Kai was dating her best friend, decide to fake date to try to make them jealous. This book was messy and dramatic and so good and addicting, and I loved this book so much. And again, it is criminally underrated. It is not that thick of a read, like maybe it's 300 some pages, 330, but this book is so fast to read. It also has the only one bed trope in it, and I love the only one bed trope. I love this book so much, and again, I just think that this book is like criminally underrated. The final trope on my list today is Sunshine and Grumpy. I love the Sunshine Grumpy trope, and I feel like I've been reading a lot of it recently. First up, naturally, I have Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I read this one recently. I also have a vlog up for it in case you're interested in watching. This is a Sunshine, Grumpy, figure skater, hockey player, college, found family, indie pub romance, and this was amazing. This book is a bit thicker, so I'm just going to warn you now. It is definitely a little bit more of a dense book with a lot of side plots and things, but it is really phenomenal. It also, on top of the romance, deals with a lot of interesting topics. It talks about therapy, toxic people, friendships, found family, and I just thought it was really beautiful. It is incredibly smutty, as a note, or like incredibly to me. I don't know. I don't want to say this is incredibly smutty, and then like you read it and you're like, that wasn't smutty at all, Alexis. I don't read a lot of smut, so to me, this was like very smutty. So if you've read this book and you also like read smut and romance, can you let me know if you thought this was incredibly smutty or just like normal smutty? Because like I don't know. But I really enjoyed this book. The emotional relationship between these two is phenomenal. It has a bunch of little tropes in it too. Like they live together for a little bit. It also has like the one of them gets sick and the other takes care of them trope, and I just really enjoyed it. I will say for this one, we're gonna put a trigger warning up, by the way, for eating disorders and disordered eating. I felt like the author did a very tasteful and well thought out job in including the more difficult topics in this book. But again, I don't want to recommend a book blindly without giving you a warning on those topics. Our female main character struggles with some it's hard to explain quickly, but some very complicated eating disorder struggles, specifically due to a toxic person in her life who plants those ideas. It's not Mr. Loverboy right here, I promise. They have a great relationship. It's not toxic. But this book does handle conversations about toxic parents, parent relationships, toxic friendships, just all the above. And this is the first in a series, and I'm really looking forward to reading more in the series because I think that they're going to follow the guys on Nate's hockey team. So I'm really looking forward to reading more from this series. I did truly love this book so much. I know I just gave a lot of like trigger warnings and content warnings and stuff, but I do really think that if you are willing to read a book that talks about therapy and toxic people while also having an incredible romance, an incredible found family, and a lot of smut, then you should really think about reading Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. The next book I don't have a copy of with me right now, and that is When in Rome. I actually am loaning my copy to my stepmom, which is why I don't have it, but y'all, When in Rome? So good! It is a Sunshine, Grumpy, small town romance, and it's also closed door, and it's so cute! Our female main character is a big fan of Audrey Hepburn, and she decides to go to Rome, Kentucky to kind of have her own Roman holiday moment because she is a singer who has fallen out of love with her career and she wants to get away. And when she gets to Rome, Kentucky, she crashes her car on the porch of this random guy, our love interest, and he lets her stay with him because she doesn't have a place to stay and the town inn is full. And yeah, by the way, I found this out. I'm so excited. The first in a series, and I cannot wait to read more in this universe about these characters because When in Rome is so cute, and y'all, it's like Sunshine Grumpy in the purest, most fantastical way. And the final book for Sunshine Grumpy is The Tourist Attraction. I haven't read this one in a long time, so some of my details are fuzzy. Sorry about that. But it's about our male main character and a female main character. She is visiting this city in Alaska, and when she gets there, she finds out about this restaurant called like the Tourist Attraction. And it's run by this really, really grumpy guy who hates all customers and named his place that like in a camp way. But because it like got wind online, all the tourists think it's like so funny and they go there. And it's like this whole thing that everyone goes there because the service is bad and it's like a touristy experience. And he is like super peak grumpy and she is much more sunshiny. And I enjoyed that book so much. If you like grumpy male main characters and also a fun series that has, I think, 3 books out right now, if not more in the future, I really recommend starting that series. It's very wintry, and while I truthfully don't remember the most details about that series, which makes me very sad, they are really fun. I listened to them on audiobook, and I liked them a lot.
Alright friends, so unfortunately that is it for today's video. I know I've been preaching about my technical difficulties, but unfortunately because of technical difficulties, my outro was not something I could use, so instead this is our little outro instead. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. I read all of my comments, and I would love to hear if you guys have read any of these books or have any book recommendations based on all the tropes I shared today. Don't be shy. Feel free to message me on Insta if you would like. Here is my account, and I would love to hear from you guys. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Bye!